MIP on 89.3. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here with you as we broadcast live on Pacifica Radio and specifically WPFW FM in Washington, D.C., and across social media. Folks, first of all, we are honored to have today a co-host. I decided not to do it by myself, and I may try this hat on more than once. We have with us um, recently made emerita, the General Secretary of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, sociologist, theologian, wearing many hats, the Reverend Dr. Ava Elaine Carruthers, who was just recently, in the past 8 months, I believe, installed as Queen Mother Nana Aba Bentuma in Ghana. Dr. Carruthers, thank you for joining us and being my co-host today on Make It Plain.
My pleasure, for sure.
It is a pleasure to have you, and we so appreciate you. We're going to go jump right into it and get started. An organization I have a lot of regard for, and we've worked together over the years somewhat directly and indirectly. They have been on the front lines of all of our latest civil rights struggles in the past number of years, and most recently made all the difference in the DEI struggle. The president and CEO of Democracy Forward joins us now, Skye Perryman. And Skye, if I'm not mistaken, you're part of the founding group of
I was
Democracy
one
Forward.
of the early lawyers at Democracy Forward in 2017 when we got started. And one of the things that's real special about our community is that people stick around, or people like me that go other places come back. We've got other alum that have come back. We really have been trying to build this community for each other. So it's just a pleasure to get to be back as CEO.
It is, and it's a pleasure to have you. First of all, give us a sort of a primer on the suits that you filed, those that have been successful, where others stand right now. Just kind of give us a landscape, because I don't know that people have gotten such an update. You know, we're dealing with a chaos agent who changes the news cycle every day. There's no telling what's going to be in the news today. So give us an update, if you would, on the struggle against this administration when it comes to DEI in the courtroom.
Yeah. And I'll start real big picture for a minute. We've been at this now. This administration's been in office, what is it, for about 13, 14, 15 months now. So about a year and a few months. And over the course of that time, there have been over 700 federal cases filed against the government. That's almost 2 a day. I mean, just to be clear. And the administration has been losing overwhelmingly. And that includes even when these things go up to appeal. So they'll come out and say, well, when we go to appeal, we're winning more. No, they're not really appealing. And I'll give an example on DEI. They're not really appealing many of the cases that we win. The ones they do, they're having mixed results. And so part of me is just to say, while there's a lot of skepticism in the country, as there should be, about certain practices at the U.S. Supreme Court, the courts across this country are serving as a huge guardrail for people in communities every day. And it's really the brave clients that are stepping up to the plate when powerful institutions are being quiet. Clients, people, and individuals and communities across this country are stepping up, going into court, and that's protecting everybody, which leads us to the DEI places. I mean, this administration has wanted to be on a crusade against diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, by the way, civil rights overall, since it came in. And so the first thing the administration did was they issued this executive order claiming to outlaw DEI. It was a very generalized executive order. A federal court said that was unconstitutional and was a violation of the First Amendment. That case on appeal got stayed in some ways because it was unclear kind of what the executive order was actually doing. But just to be clear, the courts that are looking at these things are saying these are blatantly violative. Last year on Valentine's Day, you'll remember the Valentine the president gave the American people was to threaten to defund all of K through 12 public education and higher education, including in private educational institutions that get any federal money at all. So that's virtually all of higher education. If you didn't certify as an educational institution that you agreed with the president's views of the civil rights laws, and under this Dear Colleague letter is what it was called. Under this Dear Colleague letter, what it meant was that schools couldn't teach basic history, Black history, American history, couldn't teach accurate history. We sued. case was assigned to a Trump judge. We won before the Trump judge, and the administration then abandoned its appeal. It didn't even appeal it up. And so we've sort of been able to preserve that funding. But the administration doesn't stop there. And so now they're playing whack-a-mole again and came out with another executive order that we've just challenged, trying to take away federal, trying to penalize businesses, including small businesses that contract with the federal government if they won't certify that they don't engage in diversity, equity, inclusion. So the case is largely we're winning, but the administration continues to try to pursue this anti-diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility agenda.
Yeah, that's it. It never stops. The beats keep on coming. Dr. Carruthers, you have a question for President Skye.
Yes, Skye, thank you so much for the commitment and the work that you are doing. One of the things that came to mind as you were speaking was the power of language. And so when we talk about the way in which the government has framed this as reverse racism or racial discrimination against the majority population, I wanted you to explain a little bit more about the irony of that and how you have to be very intentional about language. I'm reminded of the fact that after the Civil War, it was whites who got reparations based on the power of misappropriating the words for justice that we use.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you opened this up for conversation. I'll say a few things of what we've learned and then would love to get y'all's perspectives as well. One is just, you've heard me say, I'm going to say diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility every time we talk about this, because before I get to the incredibly ridiculous claims of reverse racism, which we'll talk about in a second, I want to be clear that what messaging and polling tells us is that acronyms can become these boogeymen that scare people. And this is one of the things that Trump does, is he tries to use these acronyms. One time it was CRT, critical race theory. I mean, all that is just an intellectual theory that understands and appreciates the context of racism in America. There's nothing boogeyman about that. It's just it's the truth. But that became this big bad word. They've tried to do the same thing with DEI. And so what we know is that the vast majority of Americans in this country, regardless of their race, the vast majority of Americans in this country support civil rights, are proud of the fact that we have overcome barriers to inclusion. And when you say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of a sudden people are like, well, wait a second, so that's one thing I'll just say on the power of language, even as we're having this conversation, that we're trying to really make sure people understand the attacks against diversity, equity, inclusion. They're attacks against civil rights. They're attacks against the whole progress we've made. But on your question around this so-called reverse racism, this is really one of the largest gaslights that we've seen in the 21st century. You have the administration, and powered by Stephen Miller, who's in the White House, but who had been at this for some time, even before he went into the White House, really, frankly, a white supremacist agenda. I mean, these are people that are trying to use the words that appear in the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, that are enshrined there to accomplish a specific goal, which was to overcome enslavement in this country and overcome the chatteling of Black people. They are using those words now to prevent racial equity initiatives that benefit everybody in the country, but that also benefit Black people, who are the whole basis of the 14th Amendment in our second founding. And so it is really important, and we've been doing this in our cases at Democracy Forward, that we got to be truthful, not neutral. And the truth here is that there is just no such thing as these concepts that they're coming up with. And what they're doing is that they're gaslighting our civil rights laws and our civil rights movement to harm the very people that fought for those rights in this country. And so we're very clear about that in our cases. Now, the other thing they've done, which is very King-like, is that these cases really are just purporting to tell people that they can't say or associate with certain people or initiatives. Well, that's a violation. You don't even have to get to the civil rights laws. You don't have to get to the 14th Amendment. That's a violation of the First Amendment as well. And so many of our cases are really, we bring those First Amendment claims to make sure that people understand what a fundamental threat this is to so many different rights. And also because that's a place that the administration has, they have they've had a harder time in First Amendment law, where unfortunately with some of the civil rights laws, they have been able to convince certain courts that are shaped by their political movement to try to reverse and cut back. So that's a bit of the interplay.
Didn't their tactic have some effect at the Fourth Circuit? Is that accurate? There was a case.
So on which case? Like on these ones against the executive orders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of this has become, I would just be clear, some of this has become quite complicated. And the Fourth Circuit, so we brought an initial case that you're talking about that won a really great court order in the district court around the First Amendment that then got appealed to the Fourth Circuit. What the Fourth Circuit was really looking at was whether the executive order that the president issued, you hear people say executive orders aren't law, they don't do anything. It was really looking at that. Like, is this real enough to be challenged in this moment? It was not actually looking at the substance, and this is very important, of the crusade against diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So I'll just be very clear. There has been no court in this country that we are aware of to date that has looked at what the president is saying about DEI being, quote, unlawful or whatever, that has agreed with that. There have been courts, including in our cases, that have had procedural disagreements among themselves and with the district court about whether the case is ready to be brought or not. The president wants people to think that the law has radically changed, and it really hasn't. And I think that this case that we just brought, which is a precise, this executive order precisely says what these agencies are going to do. We brought them against the agencies. I think you're going to see that play out in this case.
But meanwhile, it's had a de facto chilling effect, hasn't it, when it comes to
effect. Yeah.
Talk to us about that. And not only with government contractors, but in the private sector and the nonprofit sector as well.
Yeah. So I think this is why I was so grateful that you guys invited me on. And it's amazing what you do through this show, because the chilling effect is actually something that we, the people, get to control. We may not be able to control every court decision, but we can control how we respond to this moment. And what has happened, let me go back to the Dear Colleague letter on education. Not a single university sued to challenge that Dear Colleague letter, even though it could have defunded their universities. We sued on behalf of academics and people that work, like the workers at the universities, and won for everybody. And what you saw is, even with that win, and even with the administration backing off of the appeal, there are still certain colleges and universities that are changing words on websites, taking programs away, all of these things. And that's the chilling effect. And the thing that we want people to understand about the moment this country's in, like prior moments, is that this is a movement that the president is part of that is just trying to scare and intimidate people. And so what they're trying to do is to claim power they don't have, the power they don't lawfully have, in order to scare and intimidate people to back off of our commitments to civil rights, to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And that's something that people have a lot they can say about, because people can hold institutions accountable, as we've seen with Target, as we've seen with the Target boycott. People can hold institutions accountable for backing down, for off their stated commitments. And I think that we're going to need to see that type of action in response to some of this capitulation.
Folks, if you've got quick calls, call us at 202-588-0893, 202-588-0893 to speak with President and CEO of Democracy Forward, Skye Edwards. Dr. Carruthers.
Yeah, so Skye, you have talked about this really imperative for us to understand that to be truthful is very, very important, and you cannot be neutral. So when we think about the ways in which this executive order, grounded in a Project 2025 and Project Esther strategic plan, where all they literally are doing is turning the page and deciding today what we are going to accomplish. This point you make about common people just organizing, being informed and organizing, is so significant. And I know you have learned a lot. Are there some specific things you can say that can happen on the ground that can really, really make a difference? Because to be silent is not, your neutrality is a decision that makes a difference.
Absolutely. So number one, we want people and this sounds trite, but it is my number one ask of everybody, is to not get disengaged. Listen to this program, show up, talk to your neighbors. When you wake up and just want to pull the covers over your head and say, all this is terrible. That is what this administration, and that's what administrations like them. I'm from Texas, so this is not just new. I mean, everybody knows in a lot of these communities, this isn't new with this administration. It's happening. It has happened in communities across the country. They want you to feel like you don't have power. So the first thing you've got to do is a mindset shift. And you've got to rely on your loved ones. You've got to tune into shows like this, if that's helpful, to say, I'm just not, every day I get to make a decision if I'm going to be apathetic and disgruntled, or if I'm going to turn all that into, I get to make a decision with how I respond. And that's the most important thing at this stage of where we are in this country. That is the most important thing that every single American can do. And I have a book coming out in August, and I will come back and talk to you all about it, called Ordinary People, Extraordinary Time. And it is all about what individuals can do in their lives. And the number one step is your mindset. So that's number one. Now, other things that can do with respect to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility specifically, I think we can do a lot. One is, if there are companies, local businesses, schools, big companies, leaders that are out there speaking up and doing the right thing, that are saying, we're not going to deny equity in this country. My alma mater, Georgetown University, Trump's nominee for U.S. attorney, first thing out of the gate, wrote Georgetown University and said, the law school, you need to abandon your DEI initiatives. They, within a day, wrote back and said, what are you talking about? We're a Jesuit institution. We have equity, justice. This is what we do. Well, I'm an alum. We got to give credit where credit's due and write those institutions, even if you're not part of them, thanking them. And then the other side of it is, when institutions disappoint us, we've got to call it out. And I think that you've seen, of course, with the Target boycott, with a number of the what we call nonviolent direct collective action, we can do that. But you don't have to just do it for these big companies. You can do it in your own, in your own communities. My son's school is public school, still holding amazing cultural fairs where everybody brings different food items and things from cultures that mean something to them or ones they're a part of. That, that's great at this point of time. And we need to be calling out those things. The other thing is to figure out, there's an election coming up. So where are folks on these issues? If someone can't stand up and say, yes, I believe diversity makes us stronger. By the way, the vast majority of Americans believe that. I believe equity is important to justice, and I want everybody to be belonging and included. I mean, then, do they really deserve your support? So I think that there's a lot of these types of things that we can be doing in our own lives. But the main thing is that mindset shift. And if you feel yourself getting isolated and alone, there's no shame in that, because that's what the president wants you to feel. That's what this powerful movement wants you to feel. But that's where we need to be building community with each other and be in community.
Well, first of all, from one Hoya to another, Hoya Saxa, Skye, and also you all were also involved in the suit when it came to SNAP benefits, I believe.
Absolutely.
And everyone doesn't see the relationship necessarily between DEI, civil rights, and SNAP, and that was a victory. Right. So talk to us
Absolutely.
about that and how those intersect and the significance of winning that.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about the intersection really quick, and I'll use I've been thinking about him a lot these days since, we can use Jesse Jackson's quote, right? That, when white people get a cold, Black people get pneumonia, right? Because of the systemic and structural inequities in our country and in our society that we've never fully addressed and overcome. And so there is a direct relationship between the ability of us to equalize and to make justice for all through our diversity, equity, inclusion commitments and initiatives, and the ability of services to be delivered in a way where they actually benefit all people. And so whenever the president, whether it's, you can look at the federal workforce cuts. We don't even have to look at SNAP. I'll get to SNAP in a second. But whenever the administration wants to take this broad brush, the people that it is going to hurt the most are often the people who have been structurally and systemically disenfranchised, intentionally, structurally, and systemically disenfranchised over generations. And so if you look at something like the federal workforce cuts, I mean, I believe we have overt discrimination going on. We're representing a range of Black senior professionals within the federal government in first of their kind cases saying you are picking off the Black people and that's unlawful. But even if you look at
hold that point, let's help people understand too.
Alvin Brown, yeah.
The large number, the disproportionate number is compared to the population of African American and women federal workforce employees. They have
well, that's what I was, yeah. So number one, you have a overt situation with people like Governor Lisa Cook, Alvin Brown, who we're representing, with senior Black officials in government that they really do appear to just be targeting based on their race. I mean, just to be very clear. And then you have this other perverse and situation happening where they've sought to eliminate civil servants without any cause whatsoever. We've student challenged on that. And then to you, that's where your point comes in. And if you look at the demographics there, we know that the populations of those federal workers and the way in which this is being implemented disproportionately affects Black people and people of color. So that is like before we even get to SNAP. Well, then you get to SNAP benefits. Okay, SNAP is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. 42 million Americans utilize.
That's what we used to call food stamps, y'all, for those of you who still don't get it.
Yeah, food stamp, SNAP. 42 million Americans rely on food stamps. The majority of those Americans are working Americans. But because of our system in this country, and Texas minimum wage $7.25 an hour, because of our systems in this country, people that are working cannot afford to fully make ends meet. And SNAP is there for those working Americans. And so for the first time in history, during the government shutdown in the fall, the president sought to try to weaponize the SNAP program during the shutdown in order to win a political fight. And what that meant was that people in this country, and many of our, community members, right? People in this country were facing getting to the end of the week and not being able to go to the grocery store in order to put basic food on the table, including, again, by the way, working Americans and working families. And so we sued and we won a court order. We also exposed in the course of that suit that the president was really trying to deprive people of food. Like he fought all the way up to the Supreme Court to try to just deprive people of SNAP benefits, which was a good thing for the American people to have to see and level with, that this is the person running your country, is not rooting for everyone. And that was a very big win, but it was a win, not just for the SNAP benefit program. I think it was a win for people in communities across this country to show, even in the middle of a shutdown, that they had power, they could step forward. And of course, those relationships between our public health infrastructure, like we were talking about, and race and racism in this country are undeniable.
All right. Quick calls before we have to run. Caller, you're on there. The one caller didn't want to give her his name. Caller, you're on the air with Democracy for President and CEO Skye Edwards. Quickly for me, please.
That wouldn't be me, would it?
I guess so. Yes, it's you.
Oh, okay. No, I always give my name, but nobody asked this time. I wanted to ask, it seems to me we're like Israel. We in Israel, they blame Netanyahu instead of the fact that it's just a racist society. 1 year before Trump got into power, I went to an Ivy League institution from 69 to 73, and they got rid of DEI before Trump got in there. It seems to me that happened. The other thing is this: there is no, in the press, we had a person named Kirk, who I'm not really that familiar with, but I did hear him say how uncomfortable he felt when he saw a black airline pilot. Since 1960,
Charlie Kirk,
when they allowed black airline pilots, there've been no accidents. And could the people in favor of DEI point that out and correct and say this is the need, not only for education and black history, but education and DEI? It's a perfect example why we need DEI, because they're not going to hire a lot of black pilots if they just believe this and they don't go with facts and statistics.
Right. Thank you for your call. Skye, you want to respond?
I'll say, look, we said this at the time it was coming out. Trump has certainly accelerated much of the decline in democracy in the United States, the attacks on civil rights, but they certainly predated inauguration. And you can see that in so many ways. Project 2025 was not just a threat to the federal government of what could happen federally if Trump took office. It was happening, and it had already been happening in communities and states across the country where we work. In Arkansas, we had to go to court to protect librarians from being criminally penalized librarians for misshelving books, you know, and all types of things. So I would just affirm the callers, you know, the caller's real sentiment on that this is not just a problem of the Trump administration. It is a societal problem. It's something that's been building for some time. I do believe that he uniquely, and this administration uniquely, is accelerating a backlash against civil rights and progress in this country that is deeply concerning, and using the power of the federal government and weaponizing that power to do it, which is why, of course, we're spending so much of our time trying to and successfully in many instances, pushing back against that acceleration. But I do affirm the caller's sentiment that this is not just something that began at Inauguration Day, and it has the foundations of a society that still is not fully reckoned with its past.
Skye Edwards, we thank you for joining us on Make It Plain. Let people know how they can keep up with you and Democracy Forward.
Yeah, so go to democracyforward.org and you can follow our work. You can sign up for our newsletter. We do not spam you. We have a great newsletter that can keep you up to date. And then Democracy Forward is on all social media channels. So please follow us there, because sometimes you can get more up-to-date information there.
Looking forward to hearing more. Looking forward to the book. We'll definitely have you back.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about that, and that really easy, accessible steps. But you don't need to wait till the book comes out. We outlined some steps to do today, so people should get to work. We all got to get to work. Anyway,
this broadcast and the Proctor Conference can coalition with you. Just let us know.
Thank you, and thank you. It was nice to see you, Dr. Eva, too. All right. Everybody.
All right. Take care now. Dr. Eva Carruthers here with us. Joining us now, the man who is a 37-year veteran of the armed forces, came to popularity though as the head of the Joint Task Force on Katrina, and was very prominent in that regard. Lieutenant General Russel Honoré. Lieutenant General, good morning to you. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Going on there.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. I have my co-host today is someone you've encountered, and you all work together in Katrina, is Dr. Eva Carruthers of the Proctor Conference.
Hello, Dr. Carruthers. Good to see you again.
Hello, General. It is my honor to see General Honoré.
Amen. General, let's start with the latest news in terms of the Iran war. That's what we want to talk with you about today. It appears that negotiations seemingly have stalled, and some of the latest news is that Iran is open to a conversation about reopening the Strait of Hormuz, but wants, in exchange for that, wants to table the conversation on its nuclear arms development. What is that your understanding of the latest? And if so, what are your thoughts about that?
I don't know. I didn't see tweets in the last 5 minutes. That all could have changed.
Right. Especially with the chaos agent who's president. You're right.
I know it's not a good idea to negotiate in public. That should be done through diplomatic channels. I've never seen it attempted this way in such large scale messaging. We use the concept our power structure in the U.S. is diplomacy, information, military, and economic power. That anything we do have to have an equal energy in all aspects of what we call DIME. Diplomatic, information, and military and economic. And what we see is the impact of what started off as a kinetic war to destroy the government of Iran and critical military targets and some infrastructure, has now morphed into the impact is an economic impact globally. The dual blockade, my blockade, Trump, your blockade, is now about to strangle the global economy with all of the resources that come out of through the Persian Gulf, out of the Strait of Hormuz. I think we're at a point where it's time for there's an opportunity for diplomacy to work, but it's one step at a time. Nobody's going to get everything they want at the same time. And there is some confusion and some amplification of who's in charge in Iran and what the messaging might be. But the pressure on both sides, from the international community on Iran to cooperate and open the strait, and then the pressure on the U.S. because the blockade has a direct relationship to the U.S. economy and the stock market and what people see at price at the pump. So there's equal pressure on both sides to come to an agreement and open the strait up. And I think that would be a good first step. The good news is the ceasefire is holding between Iran, the U.S., and Israel. The bad news is the ceasefire is not holding between Israel and Lebanon and on the West Bank. Israel continued to. And then yesterday, they had to respond to rockets coming out of Hezbollah. So it's a complicated event, but let's get the ceasefire set to include Israel and Hamas, and both sides can influence that. Continue the ceasefire, and let's do one step at a time. Get the economy moving. It's good for Iran, yes. It's good for the rest of the world, particularly at 20% of the fossil fuels that come out there, that's the engine of industry and keep people stoves running and the air conditioning running. And on the U.S. side, it keeps the U.S. economy moving, because we've already seen this morning, because the president juiced this thing every now and then. That's the term they use in stock, where by saying we're going to continue to negotiate, we're going to keep the blockade on, but we're going to go to some type of a negotiation as soon as we can agree on the nuclear items. But Iran's come back and played a trump card and said, nope, right now the negotiation is about opening the straits. We'll talk about the nuclear materials later. So that's my take on it.
Dr. Carruthers, you have a question for the general?
Yeah, I think so. General, I think if we were to say that there's some things you see, once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's some things you do, once you do it, you can't undo it. You mentioned the role of the way in which the war is being played out in new ways in the media. Can you give us some insight into what is happening in a larger context of this geopolitical reordering of the world, when NATO this morning has made the kind of decisions it has made because of what the US's position has been? So when you think about futuring and the next, how has this, and where are we in terms of how you see where we need to go and how we need to get there?
Well, it speaks to the point that we don't go to war without our allies, particularly in that part of the world. And the complete attempt to embarrass our allies after the war started, not negotiate with them, not build a coalition. I think there was a lot of consensus that, yeah, we need to deal with Iran, let's deal with it now. Okay, got it. But we didn't bring the allies along. And we can't even get into the Middle East with our combat power without overflying allies' airspace. We can't sustain a combat in the Middle East without using ports and logistics from our allies. And the key hubs we got in Germany and in England help sustain the air power, and Diego Garcia, which is controlled by the Brits. All those are key to being able to sustain operation. Now, we we have the most powerful Navy in the world, and we now have 3 aircraft carriers there. And the thing that's unique about the Navy, with most of the world covered by water, they've got freedom of navigation, and they can go anywhere and take combat power, but you can't sustain an operation just through naval operations. So that breakdown in the relationship with the Allies, and to do a rope-a-dope on the Allies and said, well, yeah, we didn't tell them, but I need them now, and they didn't immediately respond. And I just wanted to see if they were going to help us. Well, our relationship with our allies in Europe is based on the NATO treaty, which is a self-defense treaty under Article 5 of the NATO agreement. And many of them had issues with the road to war here, because under our new UN Charter, going into a sovereign nation without a provocation is questionable. And there are a lot of people questioning that road to war, because at the time of the attack, we were in direct negotiation with Iran, and that happened twice. So the 2 previous times we were in close negotiation with Iran was the 12-day war, when we sent the B-2 bombers in. And then at the beginning of this war, there was close negotiation handled through the Gulf nations to try and come to a discussion about the nuclear materials, and to get Iran to stop the support of international terrorism, as it's described in Hezbollah and in the Houthis down at the tip of the Red Sea. And in both cases, we attacked. So I think we confused the Allies. We left them out of the game. Then we called them to the game. And then when they said, hey, we need to take a look at what we're doing here, because you didn't talk to us before the fight. And then he used it in social media as a test. Well, I just wanted to see if they would come if I called them. Well, the agreement under Article 5 isn't written that. It's a defensive stroke. Now, in all previous attacks, the Allies have been with us because they were integrated up front into the attack plan and to the political objectives that were about to achieve. War is about achieving political objectives. And right now, we don't have the discipline in the administration to speak with one voice and to stay on a political objective that's attainable. Now, the challenge becomes how we negotiate what the Iranians want against what we are now said we want, which is a high emphasis on the nuclear fusion material. And I think there's a path forward that this could happen. But both sides need to get to the table, and we need to stop negotiating in social media.
In fact, you famously have said that this administration is practicing the art of the deal more so than the art of war. But in that context, General Honoré, isn't it a fact that the nuclear negotiations that were going on under the Obama administration to prevent Iran from developing uranium and having a nuclear stockpile were effective, and Trump pulled the plug? Isn't it a fact that if that nuclear accountability regime and process and negotiation had stayed in place, this war would be unnecessary? Or is that too much of a generalization on my part?
Well, I think they might have had it had great promise, and as far as the future. But what it had not stopped was the continuous support of Iran to in Gaza on the 7th October attack, and the operations of the Houthis to stop the Red Sea. All that was still going on, and the proliferation of what can be described as terrorism. Now, every story's got two sides to it. we went for democracy in Gaza under that administration. And we were kind of stupid because they had an election and Hamas won. What happens when the terrorists win the election? And for years, through agreements that were made, the Israelis was funneling money that we gave them in some cases to fund the government in Gaza, while Hamas was building the tunnels and getting weapons from Iran and their friends. And the same thing going on with the Houthis down in Yemen. So while we were on a path for a period of time, the Iranians never stopped challenging the West, and they never stopped proliferating at the idea of death to America and death to Israel. So while that agreement was signed, the terrorism had never stopped as we know it.
Yes, sir. Dr. Carruthers.
Yeah, so General, sometimes we can say there are at least 3 stories as well. So help us understand how you wake up and connect the dots between America's policies and actions in Venezuela, the potential for what's going on the continent of Africa. How do we understand our interest in these global affairs that really, at the end of the day, do impact our kitchen table and our safety and well-being?
Unfortunately, we got some isms running around the White House. You mentioned Project 2025 earlier that came in with these policies. We all kind of grew up with the concept that the purpose of government is to serve the people, but we end up seeing the purpose of government is to serve the rich. And the rich get richer and the poor get poor. But the other part of that ism is that there's an idea, hey, we got the most powerful military in the world. We just do what we want. And I mean, that's almost a direct quote from people that's within the hand distance of the president on a daily basis. If we want it, we just take it. We got the power. And that is direct contrary to, that's an advanced form of colonialism that the British eventually failed at, and the French and everybody else. And we can only see the foot tracks in the Middle East and how they drew borders and how they divided up Africa in the way they wanted, that have caused century-long conflicts. That being said, this idea that if we want to go to Venezuela, we just go because we got a powerful military. The idea that we want to go to Iran, we'll go because we got a powerful military. And they can't do nothing about it. We want to ban supplies going into Cuba, we could do it. That is a very sick, anti-democratic and un-American. There's no way in our Declaration of Independence or in our Constitution that to support this arrogance, that if we want to do it, and they said, okay, Mexico, you next. And then we saw 2 CIA agents got killed there last weekend or last week. This idea that we got the power, we can do anything we want. I think they need to put a period on that. You can do anything you want one time because you got to live with the consequences. And this administration is seeing the people, by and large, from all parties walking away from them, turning it back on them as we move forward. And when somebody criticizes them, say, well, you're proliferating political violence because you speak ill of the administration, or you ask a question that we don't want to answer, so you are a traitor. We got some serious dialogue going on here that it takes serious people like y'all to try and make sense of it to the American people, because on a daily, people just going trying to go about living their lives. All the teachers woke up this morning, go teach kids to finish school. The parents got them to school and trying to go out and make a living and figure out how they're going to pay for their gas to go in their vehicle. People are dealing with the daily issues of health and welfare of their family. But there's old quote I ran into a few weeks ago from Buddha, the big Buddha. He said there's three things you can't hide: the moon, the sun, and the truth. We've got to continue to shine light on the truth as we see it and how we feel about it and the reality of it. I feel too many people of influence, and there are many are speaking up, are not speaking the truth as we see it. You know, you were previously talking about the DEI and the impact of what the administration's done. But when all those DEI policy was proliferated under Biden, it should have became law. You can't write a damn presidential policy and think it's go beyond your and you had the power in the House and the Senate to do it on the Obama administration, and we pissed it off and didn't get it done. We didn't resettle immigration under Obama. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that when you got power, you got to use it, because these summer guns are using that power. They're using their power, and then Biden put Elaine Department of Justice guy in, that guy Eric Garland, probably did as much harm to our democracy as Trump has, because he didn't prosecute the cases right, and he was late, and everybody was going along shaking their head. So when we get in power, we got to use that power, and it can't be something that's good like DEI and it's in a presidential policy. It's got to become law.
Yeah.
So, Mark, can I follow up with that question? Because General, you mentioned this word truth, and I want to say and let you know that we're still on that path. We have just concluded a truth-telling commission, the Hart Truth-Telling Commission against anti-authoritarianism, and to address the human rights framework around what's happening in the United States, because we got to connect these international issues as well with what's happening at home. And so I'm remembering when we met 21 years ago with our dear friend, and through our dear friend, General Harry Brooks, and you agreed to come to give us a briefing for the Katrina Truth-Telling Commission we were hosting. And at that time, one of the things you acknowledged and confirmed for us was that the federal government under FEMA had already done a simulation called Hurricane Pam. So they knew what would happen if the levee did in fact break. When we think about the militarization of our streets through ICE, when we think about the budget proposals that are going to give Homeland Security more budget than military, when we think about the ways in which these detention centers are being identified and purchased, et cetera, you as our hero, our wise one, in terms of emergency preparedness, we need to hear from you in terms of what we might need to be prepared to do, how we need to know our rights and have our children know our rights to protect our communities. Would you speak to that, please?
Well, there have been a lot of successful actions inside of communities of all flavors, on the even mega communities are pushing back on these, and staunch Republicans and Democrats. But it starts with a good fight at the local level, because many of these, the expansion of the detention centers is being done in the dead of night with these big contractors who come in with the Department of Homeland Security and buying up warehousing. And in places where people have been successful, they've used the infrastructure process. You got towns with 6,000 people, and they want to put a detention center for 10,000. The water, the sewer, none of that can handle it. The healthcare, and where people have spoken up, they've been pretty successful at pushing back at the idea of wanting to put a detention center in some of these sometimes rural communities. And people got to push back, but you got to push back at the local level and at the state level, and then you got to go to court. You got to move your feet. You can pray about it, but you got to move your feet. And we people are pushing back as much about what these things say about our respect for humanity as it is, we don't want this in our community. Our infrastructure is not can't handle it. We don't have the housing for the people that's going to come here and do it. Going to drive up the cost of housing for the people that live here. And it has very little economic impact for the local people. And we don't want to be a part of it, is what many of them are saying. And again, they come from all political flavors. You can have it anywhere, just don't have it in my community. And people need to continue to push back, and they need to be empowered to do so. And then they need to call their legislators up and bug the heck out of them, excuse my language, Rev, because silence means consent. If there's something going on in your community or in your state, and you're not calling your congressperson and your senator, they might be of a different party, but those calls make a difference. And then you got to call them, then you got to call them out. And we need the entire community. You know, we got through the civil rights movement through the pulpit. We need that pulpit to get active again. Because the pulpit has not been the necessary amplification. Before we had social media, we had preachers.
That's right.
That took the message local. And we had radio stations like this one that people could listen in on. And now many has given this up to social media, and we got various flavors and brands of it. And based on your age group, you got to be an expert in that to figure out if you want to get to the younger than 20, the older than 20, the older than 30, because all have been subdivided in categories that are shaped by their life experience. But we got to speak up about these, and we've got to make that a part of our conversations, that we need civil engagements to stop that, because again, people are most concerned about the way we're treating human beings behind these bars. And that is the biggest concern, but how to do it is keep it out of your community. Even Mississippi said hell no to incarceration centers.
Lieutenant General Russel Honoré, sir, we thank you not only for your service in the military, but your service to our people. And we appreciate your clarity and your analysis. And hopefully we can stay in touch as things develop, and hopefully this administration will find a way to take heed to what those like you are saying, who have served and know how to serve and know how to solve problems. So we thank you, sir. Okay, man.
Well, thank you, Rev, and I wish we had a little more time to talk about this incident over the weekend. But political violence has been a part of every democracy.
What you want to say something quickly about that, Lieutenant General, before we go?
Yeah, I went to the 2006 Correspondents' Dinner. I was invited there by CNN, red carpet treatment. I checked into the hotel that afternoon. Nobody checked anything in my bags when I checked in that hotel. And when we look at what happened over the weekend with this young man, number one, now we find out you can get on an Amtrak train with guns. That's an amplification. Now all the terrorists in the world know he came to DC with guns on an Amtrak train because they don't have security that check your luggage. He could have checked into that hotel with 2 suitcases full of explosives and done more damage than what he did with that shotgun. He could have checked in that hotel with an automatic rifle that could have sprayed and killed a lot more people. And the Secret Service, they failed on 9/11 and the FBI. They had enough information to stop that. They failed on 1/6. I did the 1/6 investigation, as you remember, Doc, for the House. They failed on that thing. And while they stopped the gunman last night, they failed. They failed because the President of the United States need to go anywhere he wants, anytime he wants. But he can't be stuck on stupid and bring his entire cabinet with him, plus the vice president. They've got to do some risk assessment on where they put the entire lineup of government, the top three, the president, vice president, and speaker of the House, in a hotel with all of the cabinet there at entertainment. That was an entertainment event. That's BS. We do that all the time in the Capitol because we got about 4 rings of security around it. But how can we continue to use that now as a justification for a ballroom? That's stupid. And we ought not buy that cookie. We ought not eat into that cookie.
Yeah.
Because as America, political violence is going to stay with us.
Yeah.
Ask Evans, ask Martin Luther King, and right on down the line. It's going to be with us. We got to live with it. And we got to secure the president wherever he is. But the president needs to do risk reduction. He can't bring all of his people, decide the week before he's going. He didn't decide he was going till last week. And then bring all the cabinet with him.
Right.
Setting up there, bobbing their head, all dressed up. That makes no sense. They've got to think that we were at war. The Iranians, they would have been a great target for the Iranians at a hotel that is not secured, properly secured, with the advance of drones and ballistic missiles. We're at war. We got to stop thinking that we're sitting down watching Days of Our Lives and everything's going to be good at the end of the movie. This movie ain't over with, and we are vulnerable as a nation, and we need to think that way. Thank you for allowing me a little time to address that.
Well, we'll say goodbye to our radio audience on MIP on 89.3. I'm going to keep it general on socials just for one more question in that context, General. What are your thoughts or your assessment of the role Russia and Putin are playing even in this war? We know the president has a history of being friendly with Putin, yet Putin is assisting Iran in targeting U.S. troops. Zelensky offered, and you can correct me on this is wrong, but the news has reported Zelensky has offered this White House the anti-drone technology that we don't have to combat Iran's very effective drones. So if this goes to the ground, our troops will be in more danger. What do you think about Trump denying, speaking of security and safety, not accepting Zelensky's offer? I think obviously because he thinks that comes with more support for him in stopping Putin. Trump not accepting Zelensky's offer, your thoughts about that, and the role you think that Russia is playing, and Trump's kind of wishy-washy or vacillating, to be kind, relationship with Putin.
And the potential role of China. Right.
Well, this relationship between the president and Putin is very suspect. It's not consistent with our mission that we undertook under the past administration to support Ukraine. It was a complete flip. The president keeps saying if he was in office, that war wouldn't have started. Oh, I'm not quite sure about it. You say it, mouth say anything. But he's got this cozy relationship with Putin. Even during the beginning of this war, he lifted the ships going to lifted the sanctions that had been put on that he imposed on Russian oil, so Russian economy could run. He's very kind to dealing with the Russians and fail to push back when he can and should. Now, Russia is a supporter of Iran. By and large, Russia had not been that successful in the Middle East. They did a terrible follow-up in the support of the Syrian government. That government failed and the country failed. And Iran's been attacked. This is the second time within the last year, and the Russians have been giving them information, we're told, intel on the location of U.S. Assets in the region. But it's not logical that we are fighting against Iran and Russia is supporting Iran. And that's not coming out very clear in the media. There are people that are rationalizing that. And then when the president speaks, he speaks more of Russia as a friend as opposed to Ukrainians as a friend. That's inconsistent with what the American people thought, because the Russians violated one of the basic principles that was developed after World War II. We do not attack sovereign nations and take their land because we want it.
Right.
We don't do that as a civil society as we move forward, and have worked for about 80 years, with some exceptions. Then he did Ukraine, then we went to Venezuela, because we had a court order on the president of Venezuela that we thought because we got the power, we can just go do it. And then subsequently, this recent war in where it is right now was sparked by the October 7th attack in Israel, where Hamas crossed into Israel. It killed maybe 1,400 people, as I recall the number, that sparked this current war. Netanyahu got what he wanted. He's been going all the way back to Bush 1, trying to push this war to attack Iran. So Iran and Russia has an arrangement, but Russia economy is failing, and there ain't much they can do to help Iran other than take that nuclear fusion, as was the agreement under the Obama administration, and hold it for them. But we'll never stop Iran from wanting a nuclear weapon. It's not going. We'll never stop them. It can look like it on paper, but their aspirations are to have one. But they found something more powerful than a nuclear weapon, Rev. They've come to their own in that they control the Strait of Hormuz. When they control the strait, they control the world economy.
Yeah.
And they don't have to worry about a nuclear weapon, really, because they can close it anytime they want and squeeze the world and get what they want. War is an extension of politics. And they can get political impact by just closing the strait and hold the world hostage.
And a 5th grade social studies class tells you that. That's why you don't mess with them, because of the Strait of Hormuz, and risk that. Last question: does their control of the Strait of Hormuz and Russia's economy, does their control of the Strait of Hormuz at some point benefit Russia and Putin, General?
Absolutely, because it caused disturbance in the force. There's a word from one of the Star Wars movies. I feel a disturbance in the force. When you got the global economy starting to fail, and now they're failing and being stressed the way the Russian economy is, misery gives Putin great pleasure to see democracies fail. Because when economies fail, people get disruptive with their government. And anything that make it look like democracy don't work, he and the president of China, they're happy with that. They don't want to see democracies work because they believe in authoritarian rule. One person rule, tell everybody what to do. The rich get richer and the poor stay where you are.
Yeah.
Lieutenant General, we so appreciate you spending this extra time with us. You are a treasure and a resource that we all appreciate, my friend. Okay. And we thank you. All right.
All right, thank you. You going to the green room, or this is it? I just would like to get a link to the interview.
Yeah, I will be sure you get it. Let me do this. Folks, first of all, everyone, thank you for joining us today. We're going to end the stream and we'll talk to the General offline. Thank you all. Let's thank Dr. Ivor Carruthers. This is her debut as a co-host of Make It Plain. General, how you think she did? You think we should keep her?
Magnificent. She's the best.